Pack your things, you're coming home. The desert wind carried dust through the dying town of Hollow Creek, coating every porch, every broken fence, and every tired face in a layer of brown sorrow. People survived here, but barely. And some didn't survive at all. At the edge of town, beside an old collapsing shack with crooked wooden walls, a young widow sat on the ground with her 2 small daughters. Her name was Clara Bennett. She was only 26, but hardship had already stolen the softness from her face. Her youngest child, Ellie, sat quietly beside her, too hungry to cry anymore. Her older daughter, Rose, tried to act brave, brushing dirt off her little sister's dress as if that could somehow fix their lives. Clara held a stale piece of bread in trembling hands. It was all they had left. Small bites, she whispered gently. The girls nodded obediently. Neither complained. That was the worst part. Children were supposed to complain. Children were supposed to laugh. But poverty had made them silent. Across town, laughter spilled from the saloon while music played loudly through open windows. Men wasted coins on whiskey while Clara counted crumbs for her daughters. She lowered her eyes, trying not to cry. Again, 3 months earlier, her husband Samuel had died beneath a runaway wagon during a supply run through the canyon. The town preacher called it God's will. But God's will didn't feed hungry children. After Samuel's death, creditors came immediately. They took the horses, then the tools, then the small family cabin. Clara begged for time, but nobody cared. Now she and the girls lived inside the abandoned shack near the edge of the desert where snakes curled beneath loose floorboards at night. Every morning Clara walked into town searching for work. Every morning she heard the same answers. We already hired someone, can't afford extra help, or worse, widows brought bad luck. That morning, Clara stood outside the bakery staring through the window at fresh bread she could never buy. The smell alone made her dizzy. Ma, Rose tugged softly on her sleeve. Clara looked down. There's a man watching us. Near the horse trough stood a tall rancher wearing a black hat and faded brown coat. He looked to be around 35, broad-shouldered and quiet. Unlike the other men in town, he wasn't smiling. He was watching the children. Not with pity, with concern. Clara quickly pulled the girls closer. In Hollow Creek, women alone learned to fear attention. The man tipped his hat politely. Then he walked away without a word. Clara released the breath she'd been holding. That should have been the end of it. But fate had other plans. That evening, the desert temperature dropped hard after sunset. Cold wind slipped through cracks in the shack walls while Clara wrapped both girls beneath the only blanket they owned. Ellie coughed weakly against her chest. Clara touched the child's forehead and panic spread through her stomach. The little girl was burning with fever. No, sweetheart. Rose looked frightened. Is Ellie sick again? Clara forced herself to stay calm. She'll be all right, but she wasn't sure. Ellie had barely eaten in days. And sickness killed hungry children quickly in Hollow Creek. Clara grabbed her coat and stood. Stay here with your sister. Where are you going? To get help. The town doctor lived near the church. Clara ran the entire way. Her boots slapped against dirt roads as freezing wind whipped through her hair. When she reached the clinic, lights still glowed inside. Relief flooded her chest. She knocked desperately. No answer. She knocked again. Finally the door opened halfway. Dr. Reeves frowned the moment he saw her. Please, Clara begged breathlessly. My little girl has fever. I just need medicine. I'll pay you later. The doctor sighed impatiently. You already owe money. She's only 4 years old. That isn't my problem. Clara stared at him in disbelief. You're turning away a sick child. I'm running a business, Mrs. Bennett. Tears filled her eyes. Please. But the doctor closed the door. Just like that, Clara stood frozen in silence. Then slowly, the clinic lights went dark. She walked back through town numb with heartbreak. Some people noticed her crying. Nobody stopped. Nobody cared. Except one man. Near the stable, the same rancher from earlier stepped from the shadows. You all right, ma'am? Clara quickly wiped her tears. I'm fine. He glanced toward the clinic. You don't look fine. She tried walking away, but exhaustion finally crushed her. I said I'm fine. Her voice cracked painfully. The rancher stayed calm. What's wrong? For a moment Clara considered lying again. But she was too tired. "My daughter's sick," she whispered. "And I can't help her anymore." The rancher's expression hardened. "What doctor refused you? Please just leave us alone." Instead, the man removed his gloves slowly. "My name's Nathan Cole." She recognized the name instantly. Everyone in Hollow Creek knew Nathan Cole, owner of the largest ranch in 3 counties. A man respected by workers and feared by criminals. Some called him cold, others called him dangerous, but everybody agreed on one thing. Nathan Cole never involved himself in other people's problems. Until tonight. He looked toward the dark clinic windows. Then back at Clara. "Take me to your daughter." Clara hesitated. "I don't need charity." "Good," Nathan answered, "because I'm not offering charity." The tone in his voice surprised her. It wasn't pity, it was certainty, like he'd already made up his mind. After several silent seconds, Clara nodded weakly. The walk back to the shack felt endless. Nathan remained quiet the entire way. When they reached the broken little building, his eyes scanned everything: the cracked walls, leaking roof, missing windows. His jaw tightened slightly. Rose jumped nervously when he entered. "It's okay," Clara whispered gently. Nathan crouched beside Ellie. The child trembled beneath the blanket, cheeks flushed red with fever. Nathan touched her forehead carefully. Then he stood immediately. "She needs medicine tonight. I told you, I have no money." Nathan looked at Clara directly. "I didn't ask if you had money." Before she could answer, he turned and disappeared into the darkness. An hour later he returned carrying medicine, fresh bread, milk, blankets, and firewood. Clara stared speechlessly. "You bought all this?" Nathan ignored the question and handed her a small bottle. "Give her 2 spoonfuls." Rose's eyes widened at the sight of real food. Nathan noticed. "Go ahead," he told the girls softly. The children attacked the bread hungrily. Clara looked away quickly, ashamed that strangers had witnessed their desperation. Nathan quietly added wood to the fire. Warmth slowly filled the shack for the first time in weeks. "You didn't have to do this," Clara whispered. "Yes," Nathan replied calmly. "I did." She looked confused. Nathan sat across from her, elbows resting on his knees. "My mother raised 3 boys alone after my father died," he said quietly. "I remember what hunger looks like." For the first time that night, Clara truly looked at him. There was pain behind his eyes. Old pain. The kind that never fully leaves. Ellie finally stopped shivering and drifted into sleep. Relief nearly made Clara collapse. "Thank you," she whispered. Nathan nodded once. Then his eyes slowly traveled around the shack again. "You can't stay here. We don't have anywhere else." "You do now." Clara frowned. Nathan stood. "Pack your things." Her heart skipped nervously. "What? You and the girls are coming home with me." Clara froze completely. Outside, desert wind howled through the darkness. Inside, silence swallowed the room. Because in Hollow Creek, nothing was ever free, and Clara Bennett had no idea why one of the richest men in the territory had suddenly decided to save her family. A place that didn't feel real. Clara barely slept that night. Even after the fire burned warm inside the shack, even after Ellie's fever finally began to break, her mind refused to rest. Nathan Cole's words echoed again and again in her head. "You and the girls are coming home with me." Men didn't make offers like that without wanting something in return. Especially powerful men, especially in Hollow Creek. Long before sunrise, Clara quietly sat beside the weak little fire watching her daughter sleep. Rose had curled protectively around Ellie, holding her sister's hand even in dreams. Clara's chest tightened painfully. She had failed them. No mother should need a stranger to save her children. A knock suddenly sounded against the doorframe. Clara stood quickly. Nathan stepped inside carrying a small sack of supplies. Fresh apples, bread, and a tiny knitted doll. Rose's eyes immediately locked onto the doll from across the room. Nathan noticed but pretended not to. "The wagon's outside," he said calmly. "We should leave before the storm rolls in." Clara hesitated. "I haven't agreed yet." Nathan simply nodded. "Then decide now. No pressure. No threats." That somehow made it harder. Clara looked around the shack one final time, the broken floorboards, leaking roof, cold walls. Then she looked at her daughters. Rose was staring at the food. Ellie still looked pale from sickness. Clara swallowed hard. Pride couldn't feed children. "We'll come," she whispered. Nathan gave one short nod. Good. The girls owned almost nothing. One blanket, 2 dresses each, a small Bible that had belonged to Samuel, and an old family photograph Clara kept wrapped carefully inside cloth. That was all their entire life had become. Nathan loaded their belongings into the wagon himself without complaint. As they climbed aboard, Clara noticed several townspeople already watching from their porches. Whispers spread instantly. "Well, look at that. Nathan Cole bringing home a widow. That won't end well." Clara lowered her eyes in humiliation. But Nathan acted as though he heard nothing. The wagon rolled out of Hollow Creek just as dark clouds gathered over the desert sky. For nearly an hour, nobody spoke. The land slowly changed from dry empty plains into rolling fields dotted with cattle and long wooden fences. Then Clara finally saw it. Cole Ranch. Her breath caught. The ranch spread across acres of green land beneath distant hills, larger than anything she had ever imagined. Massive horse barns stood beside open pastures while workers moved through the property preparing for rain. Rose gasped softly. "It's beautiful." Nathan glanced back at the girls. "You like horses?" Both children nodded immediately. That earned the smallest hint of a smile from him. The wagon stopped outside a large ranch house painted deep white with wide wooden porches wrapping around the front. Before Clara could even step down, the front door swung open. An older woman hurried outside wiping flour from her hands onto her apron. "Nathan Cole," she snapped. "You disappeared all night and—" Then she noticed Clara and the girls. Her expression changed instantly. "Oh my goodness." Nathan climbed down calmly. "Martha, this is Clara Bennett and her daughters, Rose and Ellie." The woman's eyes softened immediately. "Well, why are you all standing in the cold?" she demanded. "Get inside before those babies freeze." Martha practically dragged the girls indoors before Clara could answer. Warm air wrapped around them the moment they entered. The smell of soup filled the house. Real soup. Clara nearly forgot what a proper home smelled like. Rose stared wide-eyed at everything: the staircase, oil lamps, soft rugs. Ellie clung weakly to Clara's hand. Martha crouched gently before the girls. "When's the last time you two ate a full meal?" Clara looked embarrassed. But Rose answered honestly, "I don't remember." Silence filled the room. Martha slowly looked up at Nathan. Something painful passed silently between them. Nathan removed his hat. "Can you prepare the East Room?" "Already done," Martha replied quietly. Clara blinked. "You expected us?" Nathan met her eyes calmly. "I don't make decisions halfway." Again, that certainty in his voice. Like once he decided something, the world itself couldn't change his mind. Martha soon placed bowls of hot stew in front of the children. The girls ate carefully at first. Then desperately. Clara tried not to cry watching them. Nathan sat silently at the far end of the table, giving them privacy. Finally Clara whispered, "Why are you helping us?" Nathan didn't answer immediately. Rain began pounding softly against the windows. Then he spoke, "Because nobody helped my mother." Clara looked at him carefully. Nathan stared down at the untouched coffee in his hands. "After my father died, folks promised support." His voice stayed calm but distant. "Most disappeared within weeks." Martha quietly continued cooking without interrupting. Nathan continued, "My mother worked herself sick trying to keep us alive." His jaw tightened slightly. "One winter, my little sister caught pneumonia." Clara's heart sank. She didn't survive. Silence swallowed the room. Rose stopped eating. Even Ellie looked up quietly. Nathan finally raised his eyes. "No child deserves that." Clara suddenly understood. This wasn't pity. This was memory. Pain recognized pain. Later that evening, Martha showed them upstairs to a small but beautiful bedroom overlooking the fields. 2 soft beds waited beside a stone fireplace already burning warm. Rose touched the blankets carefully like they might disappear. "Are these really for us?" "Yes, sweetheart," Martha smiled gently. Ellie climbed onto the mattress and immediately sighed happily. Clara stood frozen near the doorway. The room felt unreal. Too clean. Too safe. Martha touched her arm softly. "You don't have to be afraid here." But Clara was afraid. Not of danger. Of hope. Because hope could disappear overnight. And she wasn't sure her heart could survive losing another home. That night, thunder shook the ranch while heavy rain poured outside. Rose and Ellie fell asleep quickly for the first time in months. But Clara remained awake staring out the window. Then she noticed movement below. Nathan stood alone outside in the rain near the horse barn. Just standing there, motionless, like a man carrying ghosts too heavy to escape. The next morning, ranch life began before sunrise. Workers moved across the property feeding horses and repairing fences damaged by storms. Clara offered immediately to help. "I can cook, clean, sew, anything." Nathan looked up from the stable ledger in his hands. "You're not hired help." Her face hardened slightly. "I don't want charity." Nathan stepped closer. "You think feeding your children is charity? I think people always expect payment eventually." For the first time, Nathan looked irritated. "Then stop expecting the worst from everyone." Clara crossed her arms defensively. "You don't know what people are capable of." His eyes darkened slightly. "Yes," he said quietly. "I do." Before she could answer, shouting erupted near the front gate. Several riders approached the ranch fast. Nathan instantly turned alert. The lead rider was a wealthy cattleman named Walter Graves, a man infamous across the territory for cruelty hidden behind expensive suits and polished smiles. Walter dismounted slowly. "Well now," he smirked. "Rumors travel fast." Nathan's expression turned cold. "What do you want?" Walter glanced toward Clara standing near the porch. "So the stories are true." His smile widened. Nathan Cole finally brought himself home a widow. Several ranch hands laughed nervously. Clara's cheeks burned with humiliation. Nathan stepped forward slowly. "Careful, Walter." But Walter ignored the warning. "You know what people are saying in town." He continued mockingly. "That the mighty Nathan Cole's gone soft." Nathan's voice dropped dangerously quiet. "Leave." Walter's smile faded slightly. Then his eyes shifted toward Clara again. Something about the look made her stomach twist with fear. "You should be careful who you trust, Mrs. Bennett," he said softly. "Men always want something." Nathan's fists clenched instantly. For a second, Clara thought he might kill him right there. Instead Nathan spoke through gritted teeth. "Get off my land." Walter finally tipped his hat mockingly and rode away laughing with his men. But the moment he disappeared, the warmth of the ranch suddenly felt less safe. And Clara realized something terrifying. Nathan Cole wasn't only protecting her family from poverty. He might also be protecting them from something far worse. The man from Clara's past. After Walter Graves left the ranch, an uneasy silence settled over the property. Even the workers seemed tense. Clara noticed the way they avoided looking at Nathan directly, whispering quietly among themselves while pretending to stay busy. Something about Walter's visit had changed the atmosphere completely. And Clara could feel it. That evening, Martha prepared supper while rain clouds rolled over the distant hills again. Rose and Ellie sat near the fireplace playing with scraps of fabric Martha had sewn into little dolls. For the first time in months, the girls were laughing. Real laughter. The sound nearly broke Clara's heart. Nathan entered the house quietly, removing his gloves near the door. Martha looked up immediately. "Well," Nathan's jaw tightened. "Walter's buying land south of the creek." Martha frowned. "That close? He's doing it on purpose." Clara glanced between them nervously. "What does that mean?" Nathan sat heavily at the table. "It means Walter Graves likes owning people as much as land." The room fell silent. Martha carefully lowered her spoon. "There are stories about his ranch," she said softly. "Girls disappearing, workers beaten, families threatened." Clara felt cold suddenly. "And nobody stops him." Nathan laughed bitterly. "Walter donates money to judges and politicians." His eyes darkened. "Men like him survive because powerful people profit from silence." Clara looked toward her daughters instinctively. Nathan noticed. "You're safe here." The certainty in his voice should have comforted her. Instead, it frightened her even more. Because nobody could promise safety forever. Later that night, Clara couldn't sleep. The ranch house creaked softly under the desert wind while moonlight spilled across the wooden floors. She quietly stepped downstairs for water. But voices stopped her near the kitchen doorway. Martha stood speaking softly to Nathan beside the stove. "She still doesn't trust you," Martha whispered. "She has reasons." You planning to tell her? Nathan stayed silent. Martha sighed. She deserves honesty. Clara stepped back before they noticed her. Her chest tightened. Tell her what? The next morning, Clara woke early determined to earn her place at the ranch. She spent hours helping Martha clean, repair clothing, and prepare food for workers. By afternoon, her hands ached, but for once, it felt good to work without fear of starvation waiting at the end of the day. Outside, Rose and Ellie played near the horse pens while ranch hands repaired fences. One cowboy with red hair and a friendly grin crouched beside the girls showing them how to braid rope. That one's Jake, Martha explained while kneading bread dough. Been with Nathan since he was 16. Clara watched carefully. He seems kind. He is. Martha smiled softly. Nathan only keeps loyal people around him. A shadow crossed her face then. Because he's spent most of his life surrounded by betrayal. Before Clara could ask more, loud hoofbeats thundered across the yard. Jake suddenly stood. Nathan. Clara rushed toward the porch. A rider approached fast through clouds of dust. The horse looked exhausted. So did the man riding it. When he reached the gate, Clara froze. Her blood turned to ice. No, she whispered. The rider climbed down slowly. Tall, and shaven, cruel eyes. Derek Lawson, Samuel's older brother. The last person Clara ever wanted to see again. Nathan stepped onto the porch immediately. Can I help you? Derek ignored him completely. His eyes locked onto Clara. Well, he smirked coldly. There you are. Rose ran instantly toward Clara's skirt. Ellie clung to her hand. Nathan noticed the fear on their faces immediately. You know this man? Clara's voice trembled. Yes. Derek finally looked at Nathan. And who the hell are you? Nathan Cole. Recognition flashed across Derek's face. The rancher. He gave Clara a mocking smile. You move on fast for a grieving widow. Nathan's expression darkened instantly. Clara stepped forward angrily. What do you want, Derek? I came from my brother's daughters. Silence crashed over the yard. Rose began crying softly. You're not taking them, Clara snapped immediately. Derek shrugged carelessly. You can barely feed yourself. We're fine. Really? He looked around the massive ranch mockingly. So now you survive by crawling into another man's house. Nathan moved before Clara could answer. In 1 second he was standing inches from Derek. Watch your mouth. The threat in Nathan's voice was ice cold. But Derek only smiled wider. I know your type, Cole. Nathan said nothing. Derek turned back toward Clara. Samuel owed money before he died. That debt died with him. No. Derek shook his head slowly. Family debt becomes family responsibility. Clara stared in horror. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. Derek pulled folded papers from his coat. Samuel borrowed against Lawson land shares before the accident. Nathan grabbed the papers roughly and scanned them. His eyes narrowed dangerously. These signatures are forged. Derek smiled. Can you prove it? Clara's knees nearly gave out. Samuel would never have done this. Never. But proving forgery against men like Derek was nearly impossible. Nathan folded the papers slowly. You need to leave. Derek crossed his arms. Or what? Nathan stepped closer. For a terrifying second, the entire yard went silent. Even the horses seemed nervous. Finally Nathan spoke quietly. You threaten that woman or those children again. His eyes locked onto Derek's. And they'll never find your body. No shouting. No dramatic anger. That calmness somehow made the threat far more terrifying. Derek swallowed hard. For the first time since arriving, uncertainty crossed his face. But only briefly. He smirked again and climbed onto his horse. This isn't over. Nathan didn't move. Derek pointed toward Clara one last time. You should tell your rich cowboy friend the truth about Samuel. Clara's face went pale instantly. Nathan noticed. Derek smiled slowly. Oh, she hasn't told you. Then he rode away laughing. The moment he disappeared, Clara felt sick. Nathan turned toward her carefully. What truth? Clara looked away. Nothing. But Nathan could already tell she was lying. That evening, tension filled the ranch house like smoke. The girls sensed it too. Rose stayed unusually quiet during supper while Ellie clung nervously to Clara's side. Nathan barely touched his food. Finally Martha sighed heavily. Children, she said gently. Why don't we make apple pie together? The girls brightened immediately and followed her into the kitchen. The moment they disappeared, silence returned. Nathan leaned back slowly. What was Derek talking about? Clara stared down at her hands. It doesn't matter. It clearly does. Tears burned behind her eyes. He blamed Samuel's death on me. Nathan frowned. What? Clara swallowed painfully. The day Samuel died, we argued before he left. Her voice cracked. He wanted to take dangerous work transporting supplies through the canyon during storm season. Nathan listened quietly. I begged him not to go. Tears rolled down her cheeks now. But we needed money. The guilt she'd buried for months finally surfaced. I told him if he truly cared about his daughters, he'd stop acting like a coward and provide for his family. Silence. Clara covered her face. Those were the last words I ever said to him. Nathan's expression softened slightly. The wagon accident wasn't your fault. But if I hadn't pushed him, you didn't kill your husband, Clara. His voice was firm, certain. But guilt wasn't logical. It lived deep inside the soul. Nathan slowly stood. When my little sister died, he said quietly, my mother blamed herself for years. Clara looked up slowly. She thought working too much caused the sickness to worsen. His jaw tightened. Pain always searches for someone to punish. He looked directly at her. Sometimes we choose ourselves. Clara stared at him speechlessly. For the first time since Samuel's death, someone understood her grief instead of judging it. Then suddenly, a gunshot exploded outside. Everyone jumped. Nathan instantly grabbed the rifle hanging near the door. Jake burst into the house breathless. Nathan, what happened? Jake's face was pale. The south barn's on fire. Flames in the dark. Nathan ran out the door before anyone could stop him. Jake followed close behind while ranch hands shouted across the yard. Outside, thick black smoke curled into the night sky. The south barn was burning fast. Orange flames swallowed dry wood while terrified horses kicked violently inside their stalls. Oh my God, Clara whispered. Rose and Ellie began crying immediately. Martha pulled the girls close. Stay inside, but Clara couldn't move, because suddenly she wasn't seeing the ranch anymore. She was seeing Samuel's broken wagon. The fire, the smoke, the men carrying his body beneath a bloodstained blanket. Her chest tightened painfully. Outside, Nathan smashed open the barn doors while workers rushed forward carrying buckets. Hurry, Jake shouted. The roof's gonna collapse. Panicked horses burst from the flames one after another. But one terrified mare remained trapped near the back stall, screaming in fear. Nathan, Jake yelled. Leave it. Nathan ignored him. Of course he did. Clara watched in horror as he disappeared back into the burning barn. Seconds passed. Too many seconds. The roof groaned loudly. Workers shouted desperately. Then finally, Nathan emerged through smoke leading the frightened horse by its reins just as part of the roof collapsed behind him in an explosion of sparks. The entire yard erupted in relieved shouting. But Nathan barely reacted. He released the horse and immediately scanned the darkness around the ranch, like he was searching for someone. Jake approached quickly. This wasn't an accident. Nathan nodded once. I know. Clara felt cold. Walter Graves. Or Derek. Maybe both. Someone wanted Nathan afraid. Someone wanted his ranch vulnerable. And somehow, she had become part of the danger. Later, after the fire was finally controlled, Nathan entered the house covered in ash and smoke. Rose stared at him wide-eyed. You ran into the fire. Nathan removed his blackened gloves calmly. The horse was scared. Ellie frowned innocently. So you saved it. The smallest smile touched Nathan's face. Yeah. Rose looked amazed. You're like a storybook cowboy. Jake nearly laughed from the doorway. Nathan looked less amused. Martha handed him a towel. You could have died. Nathan wiped soot from his face. Not tonight. But Clara noticed something else. His hands were bleeding. Without thinking, she stepped forward. You're hurt. Nathan glanced down casually. It's nothing. But Clara gently grabbed his wrist before he could walk away. The room went strangely quiet. Even Nathan seemed surprised. Carefully, Clara cleaned the cuts with warm water while he sat silently at the kitchen table. His skin was rough from years of ranch work. Scarred too. Not just his hands. His entire life, probably. You should rest, she whispered softly. Nathan watched her quietly. You always take care of people. Clara gave a sad smile. Only the ones who need it. For a moment, neither looked away. Then suddenly, bang, a rock smashed through the front window. Rose screamed. Ellie burst into tears. Nathan instantly stood, pulling his revolver from his belt. Jake rushed outside with 2 ranch hands. Clara grabbed the girls protectively. Nathan picked up the rock from the floor. A folded note had been tied around it. His expression darkened immediately after reading it. What does it say? Clara asked nervously. Nathan hesitated, then handed her the paper. Leave town before someone gets buried beside your husband. Clara's hands trembled violently. They're threatening us. Nathan's voice turned deadly calm. They're threatening you. Fear spread through the room like poison. Martha looked furious. Cowards, she spat. Jake stormed back inside moments later. Whoever did it rode off east. Nathan grabbed his coat immediately. You're going after them? Clara asked. Yes. No. She stepped in front of him. That's what they want. Nathan's eyes met hers. And what do you want me to do? Wait until they come back. Clara didn't answer, because she had no answer. Nathan softened slightly after seeing fear on the girls' faces. He crouched before Rose and Ellie. Listen to me, he said gently. Nobody's gonna hurt you. Rose whispered shakily, promise. Nathan looked directly into her frightened little eyes. I promise. And somehow, everyone in the room believed him. Even Clara. The next morning, tension hung heavily across the ranch. Several workers rode fence lines armed with rifles while Jake inspected tracks near the burned barn. Nathan barely spoke all day. Clara found him alone repairing damaged wood near sunset. You think Walter did it? She asked quietly. Nathan hammered another nail into place. Walter hires men to do ugly work for him. And Derek. Nathan looked up. That man's desperate. Desperate men are dangerous. Clara wrapped her arms around herself uneasily. This is my fault. Nathan immediately stood. No, if I hadn't come here, they'd still find another reason. His voice sharpened slightly. Men like Walter Graves survive by making decent people afraid. Clara stared down at the dirt. I don't want your ranch destroyed because of me. Nathan stepped closer. My ranch survived droughts, cattle thieves, and a war. His eyes locked onto hers. It'll survive you. Despite everything, Clara laughed softly. The sound surprised both of them. Nathan looked startled for half a second, like he'd forgotten what her smile looked like. Then hoofbeats suddenly thundered toward the ranch again. Jake rode hard through the gate. Nathan. Something in his voice made everyone tense instantly. Jake dismounted breathlessly. We found one of Walter's men drunk in town. Nathan crossed his arms. And, Jake hesitated. He admitted somebody paid them to burn the barn. Clara's stomach twisted. Nathan's eyes hardened. Walter. Jake looked uncomfortable. No. Silence. Then Jake spoke carefully. He said Derek Lawson hired them. Clara felt the world tilt beneath her feet. No. Nathan stayed calm. Where's Derek now? Gone. Jake answered bitterly. Skipped town before sunrise. Coward. Clara closed her eyes painfully. I should have known. Nathan studied her face carefully. You all right? He's my daughter's uncle. Her voice cracked. They already lost their father, and now this. Nathan's expression softened slightly. Family isn't blood alone. Those words hit Clara harder than he realized. Because deep down, Nathan was already becoming something dangerously close to family. And that terrified her. That night, thunder rolled across the distant hills again. The girls slept upstairs beside Martha while Clara remained awake downstairs near the fireplace. Nathan entered quietly carrying 2 cups of coffee. He handed her one without speaking. She accepted it softly. For a while, neither spoke. Rain tapped gently against the windows. Finally Clara whispered, "Why aren't you married?" Nathan looked almost amused. That's a strange question. You avoid answering personal ones. So do you. Fair enough. Nathan leaned back in his chair slowly. There was someone once. Clara looked up. What happened? Pain flickered briefly across his face. She died. Clara's chest tightened. I'm sorry. Nathan stared into the fire. She hated ranch life, wanted cities, fancy parties. A faint sad smile appeared. But she stayed because she loved me. What changed? Tuberculosis. Silence filled the room again. She got sick fast, Nathan continued quietly. By the time doctors figured it out, it was too late. Clara saw it then. The loneliness inside him, not coldness, loneliness. Two broken people sitting across from each other pretending they weren't still wounded. Nathan suddenly looked toward her. You know what scares me most? Clara shook her head, caring about people again. Her breath caught slightly. Before she could answer, a loud scream echoed from upstairs. Rose. Clara and Nathan ran instantly. Rose stood trembling near the bedroom window, crying hysterically. There was a man outside. Nathan rushed to the window. A dark figure on horseback disappeared into the storm beyond the ranch fence. Watching them, waiting, and suddenly Clara realized something horrifying. Whoever wanted her gone wasn't finished yet. The secret hidden in Samuel's death. Rain hammered the ranch roof all night long. Nobody slept after Rose's scream. Nathan stationed armed ranch hands around the property while Jake searched the fields before sunrise, but whoever had watched the house vanished into the storm without leaving clear tracks. Still, the fear remained. Clara noticed it most in the girls. Ellie refused to leave Martha's side. Rose kept peeking nervously through windows like she expected shadows to appear again. Clara hated it. Children deserved safety, not this constant terror. That morning, Nathan sat at the kitchen table studying maps and papers while Jake spoke quietly beside him. Clara entered carrying coffee. Jake nodded politely before stepping outside. Nathan looked exhausted. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and the cuts on his hands had reopened from overwork. You should sleep, Clara said softly. Nathan barely looked up. Later, she placed the coffee beside him. You can't protect everyone if you collapse first. That finally earned a faint smile. You sound like Martha. I'll take that as a compliment. For a brief moment, things felt normal. Peaceful even. Then Nathan's expression darkened again. Jake found something near the south fence. Clara's stomach tightened. What? Nathan slid a small silver object across the table. Her breath caught instantly. Samuel's pocket watch. No. Her trembling fingers picked it up carefully. The back was scratched exactly the same way Samuel's had been after Rose dropped it years ago. How did this get here? She whispered. Nathan watched her closely. That's what I want to know. Clara's pulse pounded painfully. Samuel had been wearing this watch the day he died. The sheriff claimed it was destroyed in the canyon accident. So how had it appeared now? Unless. Her face went pale. Nathan noticed immediately. What is it? Clara looked up slowly. What if Samuel's death wasn't an accident? Silence filled the room. Nathan leaned back carefully. Tell me everything. Clara swallowed hard. The supply route Samuel took that day belonged to Walter Graves. Nathan's eyes narrowed. Go on. Samuel mentioned something strange a week before he died. Her voice trembled slightly. He said Walter's men were moving cargo through the canyon at night. Nathan's expression sharpened instantly. What kind of cargo? I don't know. Samuel wouldn't say much. Clara gripped the watch tightly. But he seemed scared. Nathan stood slowly. And you're telling me this now? I didn't think it mattered. Nathan began pacing. Walter's been smuggling weapons across county lines for years. Clara stared at him. You knew. I suspected. Everything suddenly felt connected. Samuel's death. Derek's desperation. Walter's threats. The burning barn. Clara felt sick. You think Samuel saw something? Nathan stopped pacing. I think your husband may have died because he saw too much. The room fell silent. For months Clara had tortured herself believing she caused Samuel's death. But what if someone else had caused it instead? A sharp knock interrupted the moment. Jake burst through the door looking tense. Nathan, what happened? Jake glanced nervously toward Clara. The sheriff's here. Nathan's jaw tightened instantly. Sheriff Dalton entered seconds later, removing rain from his hat. Unlike most lawmen in Hollow Creek, Dalton looked uncomfortable being there. His eyes avoided Clara's. Nathan, he greeted stiffly. Nathan crossed his arms. What do you want? Dalton hesitated. Walter Graves filed a formal complaint. Clara's stomach dropped. About what? The sheriff finally looked at her. He claims you stole money from his trading office before leaving town. What? Clara gasped. It's a lie, Nathan said coldly. Dalton sighed heavily. I know how it sounds. No, Clara snapped. You know exactly what it is. The sheriff looked ashamed, but not ashamed enough. Nathan stepped closer dangerously. You really came all the way out here for this nonsense? Dalton lowered his voice. Walter's pushing hard. Of course he is. The sheriff rubbed tired eyes. He wants her brought back to town. Fear flashed across Clara's face instantly. Nathan noticed, and something inside him hardened completely. That's not happening. Dalton looked frustrated. Nathan, no. The single word carried deadly finality. Dalton sighed. You're making this harder. Nathan stepped even closer. And you're protecting a criminal. For several tense seconds, neither man moved. Then Dalton quietly muttered, You think I don't know what Walter is? Nathan's eyes narrowed slightly. The sheriff continued carefully. But men like him don't fall unless someone brings proof. Clara suddenly remembered the pocket watch. Samuel saw something. Something important. Maybe important enough to get killed over. Nathan clearly realized the same thing. Because the moment Dalton left, Nathan turned immediately toward Jake. Saddle horses. Jake nodded instantly. Clara frowned. Where are you going? Nathan grabbed his coat. The canyon. Her eyes widened. Now, if Samuel hid evidence out there, Walter will destroy it the second he realizes we're looking. I'm coming with you. Nathan stopped. No, that was my husband, and it's dangerous. Clara stepped closer stubbornly. So is staying here. Nathan opened his mouth to argue. But Martha interrupted sharply from the doorway. She's right. Both turned. Martha crossed her arms. If this concerns Samuel, Clara deserves answers too. Nathan looked frustrated, but after several long seconds, he nodded once. By afternoon, they rode toward the canyon beneath dark storm clouds. Jake led ahead while Nathan stayed beside Clara's horse. The narrow trail twisted between steep rocky cliffs where strong winds howled through stone walls. Clara's heart pounded harder the deeper they traveled. This is where they found him, she whispered. Nathan looked toward the dangerous drop below. The canyon floor sat hundreds of feet beneath them. One wrong step meant death. Jake suddenly raised a hand. Stop. Everyone froze. Jake climbed down from his horse and crouched near rocks beside the trail. What is it? Nathan asked. Jake lifted something carefully from the dirt. A rusted metal box. Clara's breath caught. Nathan took it slowly and forced open the lid. Inside were folded papers wrapped in oilcloth, and several small leather-bound notebooks. Jake frowned. What the hell is this? Nathan scanned the first pages. His expression darkened instantly. Shipping records. Clara leaned closer. Walter Graves' name appeared repeatedly beside lists of rifles, ammunition, and illegal payments. Jake cursed under his breath. This could bury him, but Nathan kept reading. Then suddenly he went still. What? Clara asked nervously. Nathan slowly looked up. These aren't Samuel's notes. Cold fear spread through Clara's chest. Then whose are they? Nathan turned another page carefully. And there, signed clearly at the bottom, was Derek Lawson's name. Clara stared in disbelief. No. Jake looked equally stunned. Derek was working with Walter. Nathan's jaw tightened. Looks like Samuel discovered it. Everything finally made horrifying sense. Derek hadn't come for the girls. He came searching for these records. And if Samuel discovered the smuggling operation, then Samuel hadn't died accidentally. He was murdered. Clara's knees nearly gave out. Nathan caught her before she fell. Tears filled her eyes instantly. They killed him. Nathan held her steady gently. Yes. Pain crashed through her like a wave. Not guilt this time. Rage. Before anyone could speak again, a gunshot exploded across the canyon. Jake shouted suddenly. Down. Another shot slammed into rocks beside them. Someone was shooting from the cliffs above. Nathan instantly pulled Clara behind the horses. Move. He barked. More gunfire echoed violently through the canyon. And high above them, several armed riders appeared through the storm, including Walter Graves himself. The canyon ambush. Gunfire exploded across the canyon walls. Horses screamed in panic as bullets shattered rocks around them. Move. Nathan roared. He shoved Clara behind a large boulder while Jake fired back toward the cliffs above. Walter Graves sat on horseback overlooking the canyon like a king watching executions. Rain poured harder now, turning dirt paths slick beneath pounding hooves. Walter's voice echoed mockingly through the storm. You should have minded your own business, Cole. Nathan fired once. Walter's hat flew off as the bullet narrowly missed his head. Walter laughed coldly. There he is, the famous Nathan Cole. More gunshots rang out instantly. Jake ducked behind cover beside them. There's too many. Nathan checked his revolver calmly. Not for long. Clara clutched the metal box tightly against her chest. Samuel died protecting these records. She understood that now. He must have hidden them before someone killed him. And Derek, dear God, Samuel's own brother helped murder him. The realization shattered something inside her. Another bullet struck the rock inches from her face. Clara gasped. Nathan immediately moved closer, shielding her with his body. Stay down. You'll get shot. Not today. The certainty in his voice somehow cut through her panic. Nathan glanced toward Jake. Can you get the horses? Jake nodded once, then sprinted through gunfire toward the frightened animals. A shot cracked. Jake stumbled hard. Jake! Clara screamed. Nathan fired instantly toward the cliffs while Jake rolled behind cover clutching his shoulder. I'm all right, Jake shouted painfully. Blood soaked through his sleeve. Nathan's expression turned deadly. Walter smirked from above. Looks like your luck's running out, Cole. Nathan leaned closer to Clara quickly. When I say go, ride north. What about you? I'll hold them here. No. Clara grabbed his arm desperately. You can't fight all of them alone. Nathan looked directly into her eyes. I'm not losing anyone else. Her breath caught. For one suspended moment, the gunfire almost disappeared. All Clara saw was him. The lonely rancher who saved her daughters. The broken man who carried grief like chains around his soul. The man risking his life for her family. Then another shot shattered the moment. Nathan stood suddenly and fired twice. One of Walter's men toppled from his horse above. Chaos erupted instantly. Now, Nathan shouted. Jake forced himself onto horseback despite his bleeding shoulder. Nathan grabbed Clara's reins. Ride. Reluctantly, Clara climbed onto her horse clutching the records tightly. But before they could escape, a familiar voice echoed across the canyon. Going somewhere. Everyone froze. Derek Lawson rode out from behind the cliffs with two armed men beside him. Clara stared at him in horror. Derek smiled coldly. Hello again, Clara. Nathan's face darkened instantly. You should have stayed hidden. Derek shrugged. And missed this. His eyes shifted toward the metal box. Samuel always was too curious. Clara felt sick. You murdered your own brother. Derek's smile disappeared. He was weak. Rage exploded inside her. He trusted you. And look where that got him. Nathan stepped forward slowly. You're done, Derek. But Derek laughed. No, Nathan. His revolver lifted toward Clara. You are. Everything happened at once. Gunfire erupted again. Horses screamed. Jake fired wildly from behind rocks. Nathan lunged toward Clara just as Derek pulled the trigger. Bang. Clara heard the shot, felt Nathan slam into her. Then suddenly, warm blood covered her hands. No. Nathan collapsed to one knee beside her. Clara's heart stopped. Blood spread across his side beneath his coat. Nathan. Walter laughed from above. Finally, rage unlike anything Clara had ever known tore through her chest. Nathan looked up painfully. Ride. No. His hand gripped hers tightly. Protect the girls. Tears blurred her vision. I'm not leaving you. Another bullet struck nearby rocks. Jake shouted desperately, Clara go. Nathan forced himself upright despite the blood pouring from his wound. Then he raised his revolver one final time. Bang. Derek jerked violently in the saddle before crashing hard onto the canyon dirt. Dead. Silence hit Clara like thunder. Even Walter looked shocked. Nathan swayed dangerously. Then more distant gunfire suddenly echoed from behind the canyon. Different guns. Different riders. Walter turned sharply. Sheriff Dalton and 6 deputies charged into the canyon from the north trail. Drop your weapons. Dalton roared. Walter cursed violently. Everything descended into chaos. Some of Walter's men fled immediately. Others exchanged gunfire with deputies. Jake managed to drag Clara toward safer cover while Nathan collapsed heavily against the rocks. Clara fell beside him instantly. No, no, no. Nathan's breathing turned shallow. Blood soaked through his shirt rapidly. His face had gone pale. Clara pressed trembling hands against the wound, trying desperately to stop the bleeding. "You can't die," she cried. Nathan looked at her weakly. "That's usually God's decision. Don't joke." A faint smile touched his lips despite the pain. Even now, even dying, he was trying to calm her. Sheriff Dalton finally reached them breathless. "Walter escaped," he growled angrily. "But we got the records." "Good. Let him run. Because now everyone would know the truth. Samuel Bennett was murdered, and Derek Lawson helped do it." Nathan suddenly coughed painfully. Fresh blood stained his lips. Fear ripped through Clara completely. "Please," she whispered brokenly. Nathan's eyes slowly found hers again. Then quietly, "You brought life back into that house." Clara burst into tears. "You're coming home with us." "Us. Not me. Us." Nathan's tired eyes softened at the word. Then darkness overtook him completely. Nathan, home at last. For 3 days, Nathan Cole drifted between life and death. The doctor from Hollow Creek arrived under sheriff orders this time, terrified to refuse after Walter Graves' crimes became public across the territory. The bullet had passed dangerously close to Nathan's ribs. "Too much blood lost. Too much damage. There's nothing more we can do," the doctor admitted quietly on the second night. But Clara refused to accept that. She barely left Nathan's bedside except to comfort the girls. Rose prayed every night beside the bed. Little Ellie carried her knitted doll everywhere whispering, "Mr. Nathan's gonna wake up soon." Even Jake, tough as old leather, sat silently outside Nathan's room with worry carved deep into his face. The ranch felt wrong without him. Too quiet, too empty. Meanwhile, news spread fast. Sheriff Dalton used the Canyon records to expose Walter Graves' entire smuggling operation. Several corrupt businessmen were arrested within days. Walter himself disappeared before deputies could catch him. Some claimed he fled to Mexico. Others whispered Nathan's ranch hands hunted him down quietly in the desert. Nobody knew the truth, and honestly, nobody asked many questions. As for Derek Lawson, the town buried him in an unmarked grave beyond Hollow Creek. No church bells rang for him. No mourners came, only silence, because even blood couldn't excuse betrayal like that. Late on the third night, Clara sat beside Nathan's bed watching storm clouds move beyond the window. She looked exhausted. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. Her hair had fallen loose around her shoulders. But she still held Nathan's hand gently, like letting go might somehow lose him forever. "You know," she whispered softly, "the girls keep asking when you'll wake up." No response, only the soft crackling of firewood nearby. Tears filled her eyes again. "I spent months blaming myself for Samuel's death." Her thumb brushed carefully across Nathan's rough knuckles. "And then you came into our lives." Her voice broke slightly. "You gave my daughter's safety when the world turned cruel." Still nothing. Clara lowered her head, and somewhere along the way, she hesitated. Fear flickered briefly across her face. Then finally, "I fell in love with you." The words barely escaped above a whisper. But they were real, painfully real, and once spoken, they changed everything. A long silence followed. Then suddenly, Nathan's fingers moved weakly against hers. Clara froze. Her breath caught. Nathan, slowly, very slowly, his eyes opened. For one disoriented moment, he simply stared at the ceiling. Then his gaze found hers. Clara laughed through tears instantly. "Oh my God." Nathan's voice came out rough and weak. "You look terrible." She nearly cried laughing. "You almost died." "Still considering it," he muttered faintly. Clara pressed trembling hands against her face in relief. Within minutes, the entire ranch heard the news. Martha cried openly. Jake grinned for the first time in days. Rose launched herself carefully onto the bed beside Nathan while Ellie clung to his arm, refusing to let go. "You scared us," Rose scolded tearfully. Nathan looked genuinely guilty. "Sorry, sweetheart," Ellie sniffled. "Are you still gonna teach me horse riding?" Nathan smiled weakly. "Guess I have to survive now." The girls hugged him tighter. And for the first time in years, Nathan Cole didn't look lonely anymore. Weeks passed. Spring slowly painted the ranch green while life finally began healing. Nathan recovered slower than he liked, which meant Martha constantly yelled at him for trying to work too early. Clara secretly enjoyed watching someone boss him around. Walter Graves remained missing, but with his criminal network destroyed, fear no longer controlled Hollow Creek. Families once threatened by Walter finally spoke openly. Some even came personally to thank Clara and Nathan. Samuel Bennett's name was cleared publicly too. Sheriff Dalton himself admitted the truth before the town. Samuel died trying to expose dangerous criminals. Not as a coward, as a brave man. That mattered deeply to Clara. Because one day, Rose and Ellie would grow up hearing the truth about their father. One warm evening near sunset, Clara stood outside watching the girls chase fireflies near the barn. Nathan walked slowly onto the porch beside her. His side still hurt sometimes, though he pretended otherwise. "How's the patient?" Clara teased softly. Nathan smirked faintly. "Tired of soup. That's because you nearly died." "So I've heard." They stood quietly together watching the girls laugh. Then Nathan spoke. "I've been thinking." Clara glanced sideways. "That sounds dangerous." He chuckled softly. "I mean it." His expression slowly turned serious. "This house hasn't felt alive in a long time." Clara's chest tightened slightly. Nathan looked toward Rose and Ellie. "Now it does." Silence settled gently between them. Comfortable silence. The kind that only exists when two wounded people finally stop pretending they're okay. Nathan turned toward her fully. "I don't know much about starting over." Clara smiled sadly. "Neither do I, but maybe," he hesitated slightly, "maybe we figure it out together." Tears instantly filled her eyes again. Nathan reached carefully into his coat pocket and pulled out something small. A silver ring. Simple. Beautiful. Clara stared speechlessly. "Nathan, I know this isn't some grand romantic speech." He looked almost nervous now, which seemed impossible for a man like him. "But those girls already feel like family to me." Her heart nearly burst. "And you," his voice softened, "you feel like home." Clara covered her mouth as tears rolled freely down her cheeks. So much pain had brought them here. Loss, fear, loneliness. But somehow love survived anyway. Slowly, she nodded. "Yes." Nathan exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for weeks. Rose suddenly noticed the ring from across the yard. "Wait." She grabbed Ellie's hand instantly. "Ellie, they're getting married." The girls came sprinting toward the porch screaming with excitement. Nathan barely had time to react before both children crashed into him laughing. Clara laughed harder than she had in years. Martha appeared in the doorway wiping tears dramatically. "Well, it's about time," Jake shouted from the barn. "Took you long enough, boss." Nathan groaned quietly. "Guess the whole ranch knows now." Clara smiled warmly at him. "Good." The sun slowly disappeared beyond the hills while golden light covered the ranch. And standing there together, a widowed mother, a broken rancher, and two little girls who finally had a home again. It felt like the ending all of them had been searching for. Not perfection, not a fairy tale, something better. A family. Please friends spot my channel. Like, share, comment, subscribe for more stories. Thanks for watching.